Hi, so today we are going to talk about the different types of communication in the organization, right? There are a multitude of ways in which communication happens in organization, right? There's formal, informal, upwards, downwards, diagonal. I mean, what is all this? You know? And not only in organizations, there's a multitude of communication that happens within households as well. So, firstly, let's understand why do these types of communication matter? Okay. See, organizations rely on different communication channels so that it can function smoothly. Okay. If everything was left to merely formal communication channels, much of the communication would be lost. Okay. And if everything was made informal, much of the efficiency would be lost. So the organization has to rely on different communication channels to make sure that work happens smoothly and effectively. All right. Secondly, these communication channels, they help in avoiding miscommunication, they improve clarity, speed, and most importantly, relationships. Because at the end of the day, any organization is a collection of human beings working together for everyone's benefit. And it's important that human beings can relate to each other in a meaningful way. And lastly, formal and informal communication serve different but essential purposes. They may serve completely different purposes, but both of these purposes are essential for the smooth functioning of the organization. So let's just sort of dive into it and understand the different types of communication in greater detail. First, of course, is formal communication. That's what one expects when the word organization is uttered. Formal communication is what one, sort of expects. And what is formal communication? A, it's structured. Okay. B, it's documented. And C, it's largely done to drive accountability. Okay. So let's look at the structured official communication. Okay. Now there is a structured official communication within the hierarchy of the organization. Okay. This communication is, it may be formal or informal, but this communication is completely structured because the organization is all about meeting certain objectives. Okay. Now, formal communication is often documented in the form of memos or reports or minutes of official meetings. Okay. Those multitude of emails that keep sitting in your inbox with attachments, that's what documentation of formal communication looks like. Why is this done? Why is formal communication documented? Because formal communication, one of the objectives of formal communication is to drive accountability in the organization. You know, formal communication is a means of encouraging people to deliver what they have promised. Formal communication is a means to implement policies that have been laid out, and these policies are to be implemented for the organization's benefit. Okay. Formal communication is a means to establish patterns of reporting and, you know, gather data through this reporting. And yes, formal communication is also encouraged to drive effective coordination in between multiple moving parts of an organization. Okay. For an example, a manager sends a performance review report to HR. This is as formal as it gets, right? A performance review will determine your increment or lack thereof, your promotion or lack thereof. So this is one of the most formal communications. So are business contracts. Okay. So are policies. All right. So all of these things are formal communication. Let's look at informal communication. It's casual, it's unofficial communication that occurs naturally among employees. Informal communication doesn't only happen between peers, it may happen between boss and subordinate as well. And it does happen between boss and subordinate as well. Okay. Informal communication tends to spread faster. Okay. And it may lead to rumors if left unchecked. You know, this is what we call as the grapevine, the proverbial organization grapevine, which tells us who's the boss's favorite, who's not doing not so well in the organization today, whose project is deemed to be a success, who's going to be promoted this year, who's going to be fired, you know, who's going to be moved to a different location, what new policies are going to come in. All these are effects of or outcomes of the organizational grapevine. And you put a lot of people together, they tend to talk largely informally. They do talk formally as well, but largely informally. Remember the first lesson? We spoke about the fact that communication makes us feel good. Well, this is one way, but it has to be checked. So, an example, a team member casually informs a colleague over coffee about a new client project. You know, it's a very normal thing to happen in an organization. Discussing incoming projects and outgoing projects or the ongoing projects. Okay? All right. Let's now move to upward communication. As the word upward suggests, it's communication from subordinates to superiors. Okay? It usually happens in the form of feedback, reports, suggestions, concerns, and exit interviews. Okay? This encourages participation and transparency, both factors being extremely important for employee engagement inside the organization. Okay? For example, a junior engineer raises safety concerns during a site inspection. Okay? So, a junior engineer may be taking his senior for a site inspection, and while they're on site, you know, he sort of tells the superior that, look, particular item A may be or may pose a safety hazard for our employees in the coming days, you know. So, that is upward communication. It may also be with regard to the kind of budgets that you require, the kind of policy support that you require. Okay. So, multiple things get covered through upward communication. Moving to downward communication. As the word clearly suggests, it's from top management to lower levels or from bosses to subordinates. Okay. Instructions, goals, and decisions. These are things that get communicated top down, that is from top to the lower rungs. Okay. Now, this downward communication is extremely essential because it helps in coordination and implementation of strategy. This downward communication is what really drives accountability. As my boss used to say, put the fear of God into people, right? So, this downward communication can be formal, informal, can be harsh, can be soft, but it's an important means to driving accountability within the ranks. Okay. So, for example, a CEO sending a company-wide email announcing a strategic shift, a policy change. Remember the hybrid, that is 3 days in office and 2 days from home policy that we discussed during one of our earlier sessions? So, that's downward communication. Horizontal communication. Horizontal. Pretty much on the same level. Now, this happens between peers or departments at the same level, right? It could be peers within the same department or peers within different departments. Okay. This promotes teamwork and collaboration. You really can't put a fear of God in the person, in another person who's of your own seniority or your own grade or the same rank, so to speak. So what you do? You work with them through a meaningful workplace relationship. All right. It may include taking and giving off favors, or it may include mutual understanding of what benefits the both of us, right? So that's horizontal communication. Example, marketing and sales teams align on a campaign strategy in a cross functional meeting. Difficult, but yes, that's what successful organizations do. Talking about diagonal communication. Okay, it sort of just cuts through, it goes on a diagonal. Okay, this crosses functions and levels in hierarchy. We have right now figured out top down, bottom up, peer to peer, but this is functions and hierarchy both, just cuts across that. This is less common but useful in project based environments. For example, a finance analyst communicates directly with the operations manager of another team for budgetary inputs, right? Let's wrap up by comparing these various types of communications. There's formal, which is structured, and it is, well, the example is reports, memos, we spoke about it. There's informal, which may be casual as well as structured. Simple water cooler talk or a group chat, okay? Upward, which is bottom up, this is usually structured. Suggestion box, feedback emails, CEO announcements, training manuals, etc. Sorry, that's downward, my bad. Suggestion box and feedback emails. Downward, which is top down and structured, okay, is CEO announcements, training manuals, anything or policy information, anything that comes from higher up the ranks to lower down the ranks. Horizontal, which is peer to peer, it can be casual or it can be structured. This is team syncs, interdepartmental collaboration, etc. And diagonal, which is cross level and structured. Project updates across departments or inputs across departments. What have we learned from this particular session? That no one type of communication is better than the other. Each method or way of communication serves a unique purpose. Strong organizations use a healthy mix of all communication flows, okay? And being aware of how we communicate helps build better workplaces. Thank you so much for being with me on this journey so far.